Episode 8, Thinking Ahead, seemed like a simple and straightforward chapter. However, removing metal from the block, head, valves, and valve seats affected clearances. The goal of Part 3 is to make sure exhaust valves don't interfere with pistons, and if they do, place a mark so the pistons can be relieved or find and machine a different head. Anticipating this clearance problem, I contacted a custom head gasket provider, and I've included the link down below. They said that 45 to 50 thousandths is the average compressed thickness that will hold in diesel and high horsepower gas engines. Shims aren't offered, and their stock material was about the same thickness as the new John Deere gasket I had. Gasket sealer is another no-no. The sealer will increase the thickness of the main gasket material, but it won't allow the fire ring to seal completely. A dry installation is recommended, and nothing in the 220 says anything about using any kind of salve. To determine any interference, Prussian blue will be added to the exhaust valves and the engine rotated through a full combustion cycle. Sounds simple, but will require installation and timing of the camshaft, injection pump, and setting of the valve lash. So let's get started. Before proceeding, I apologize for the delay in getting Part 3 out. This project has been set back because of 2 total knee replacements and the fact that the 755 and I are separated by about 965 miles. The good news is I'm about 200 thousandths taller. So let's get started with Part 3. Well, the first step is going to be to put the gear case on, and there are 2 tubes locating pins there. I'm going to assemble this dry. More of a test fit. Before I put the gasket maker on. I'll have to tap that locator in just a little bit using my 2-pound hammer. The rubber side of it. Wrench and pull those tight. These are 10s, and we're just going to make them snug. Now the cam keeper rides in the cam. If you can see it here. It's kind of offset. It goes in these 2 holes. So we're going to put the cam in, and I'm going to give a little coat of the bearings, a coat of WD-40, just so they have something to write on. All we're going to do is bar this engine over, and we'll put a little oil on the bottom of the cam followers too. I'll make sure that the keeper is rotated correctly. There it's in. I'll aim the camera a little different. You can see where we can put that bolt in. I'm going to line up that bottom hole there. We only need 1 at the moment. Next we put in the idler gear shaft. It is a pretty tight fit and has to be lined up square to the hole. There we go. Then use the cap screws to pull it in. You have to be very careful. Make sure that thing is in line. If it gets sideways, take metal off of those sides and it'll be hard to get back in. Now we'll set the gears in time. Here's the injection pump white mark. This is the camshaft marked with a B. And the crankshaft gear has this mark right here. Okay, here's where some of the fumbling can start. What we want to do is put this tooth in that valley. I got it the first chance. Okay, that's step one. We can slide the gear back a little further. Until it's up against the upper two gears. Now the camshaft without the cam followers or the tappets in it can be aligned with the tooth now on the angle B and B. To align the injection pump, a plunger spring is holding back. So we have to rotate and hold while sliding the... Remember about fumbling. Here we go. There it went. So at this point, camshaft, an injection pump, and idler gear are in time. As you can see with the tooth A in the valley with the crankshaft gear. Just to be sure that idler gear doesn't come off, I'm going to insert the snap ring on there just to make sure while I'm busy doing something else it doesn't try to come off. Okay, time to put the cam followers in. Just a little bit of oil on the bottom. In the case of this, oil is cheap. Okay, there we go. More woulda, shoulda, coulda. In episode 5, a short clip, or goof, was edited out for clarity and because I wasn't ready to address it. Now it's time for the disclosure. As the block was being turned over to remove the oil pan, I hadn't remembered to remove the cam followers. Here's the part in the original clip. Take that pan off. Oh, I forgot to do that. Shoot. In that oh crap moment, I didn't take a picture of the floor, but I did the best I could to sort out which holes the cam followers came out of. Fortunately, and factually, the number 1 exhaust follower stayed in the block and the rest fell on a cardboard. Number 1 intake rolled away from the other 4, so I had the correct followers for at least 1 cylinder. As luck would have it, the other 4 fell in order and were placed in line in front of the rocker arm assembly. If this bit of luck wasn't all, both cylinder number 3 followers exhibited abnormal contact, while the remaining 4 showed a normal contact pattern. Because daylight could be seen in the abnormal contact pattern, those 2 followers will be replaced with new ones. I'll feel better knowing they're in there, and I can't justify a new cam and followers for this project. Otherwise, cam follower bores were standard and follower clearance was within 2 thousandths wear limit. I've decided that assembling this engine is going to give me an opportunity to check the exhaust valve to piston clearance, but as well I want to double check the piston to head clearance. So in order to do this, what I want to do is use the head gasket to line up where these exhaust valves are and use a Sharpie to do an approximate area of where I'm going to find the exhaust valves. Also, where the cleanest area to find the piston to head clearance is located. So in preparation, I'm going to cut another 6 pieces of 61.5 thousandths or 1/16 of an inch electrical solder. It's close enough for what we're wanting to do. I'll transfer this marking to here. I'm going to rotate the engine slightly so that I can get better access to the pistons, and also so that none of them are sitting ready for any kind of interference with the valves. Well, we'll start back there with number 1. I'm going to put a piece where the exhaust valve will touch, and also in a clear place where the piston to head clearance can be checked. The reason I want to do 2 of these tests, one is just to double check and see what my piston to head clearance is, and I want to put the indicator over the exhaust valve in case the Prussian blue does not contact with the piston. If it doesn't, I'd like to know how much clearance I actually have between the piston and the exhaust valve. Prussian blue comes in a tube, and it's a sort of a heavy liquid. Squeeze a little bit here onto a shop towel. Then we'll mark the valve with it. I won't be testing the intakes because, as we've said before, they're deep enough already in their recession. They're deep enough already in their valve. We won't be testing the intake valves because, as we've measured before, their recession is more than we need. With the last check, seeing if the indicators are in good spots, it's I'm having trouble with that. Well, with all those in place, it's time to put the head on. The head bolts still have oil on them from previous check. So this part of the reassembly process I'll just speed through. We're going to put these bolts in. We'll torque them down 3 different times, as the 220 says, as the 220 book says. First to 14 pounds, then to 28, and finally to 45. Where's this one go? Number 12. 13. Next we'll set the push rods and the rocker arms and the valve caps. When I transferred these from the shelf, I always put my right hand with the first number. So number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So I would keep them in the right order. Now before I put the valve caps on the valves, I just want to make sure there's no piece of dirt there. These have been sitting down, so they're clean. And we just cap the valve and then drop in the push rods. Now we can install the rocker arms. Flip that little guy over. We just keep fiddling with them till they drop into place. And we just have to fiddle around to make sure all push rods are seated. And then, because some valves are in the process of being opened, we'll pull these bolts down evenly across so we don't bend the shaft. These 12mm cap nuts here, we're just going to bring them down snug, because some of these valves are in the process of opening, so we have some stress on them. And at this point what we want to make sure of is that we have the rockers and the push rods. And now we will evenly, kind of sequentially, we'll start bringing down the rocker arm shaft. I'll do about a half a turn on each bolt. That one's down. To prepare the engine for setting the valve lash, we need to have cylinder 1 on top dead center. Before turning the engine over, I'm expecting all of these valves to be tight, and we'll want to loosen all of the adjusters. Since we don't have the flywheel on right now, what we're going to do is look at where the approximate crank position is. And it's on the intake stroke. So what we'll do is bar over the engine slowly as we watch number 1 come down, begin progress up. I'm using the camera the best I can to approximate where we're going to find top dead center. I'm feeling resistance from probably the wires getting ready to compress. I'm going to leave it right there for now. Valve lash, or clearance, is to be 8 thousandths. Okay, now we bar the engine over 360 degrees. Allow us to adjust these two. So now number 2 exhaust and number 3 intake are loose. With all the valves adjusted, we'll bar the engine over slowly, 360, and let's go another 360. And more. That should do it. Well, it's time to pull the head. It might be a little bit tricky to get off of there and keep our pieces of wire. Let's see what happens. Looks like everything stayed in place. Well, the good news is we have all of the indicators in place. There's a measuring piece in cylinder 3. We have one down in cylinder 1. The one in cylinder 2 has stayed with the head. And we have the exhaust measurements on all 3 cylinders in place. And it doesn't appear to be any Prussian blue on any of the pistons, so looks like we're probably good. Let's do some measuring and see what those clearances are. Well, I'll use the micrometer and get these measured for you. Let you know what the results are. Let's check the first one here. This would be piston to head clearance, cylinder number 3. I don't know if you can see, 24 thousandths. Well, here are the results. Piston to head clearance on cylinder 1 is 24 thousandths. Number 2, 23 thousandths. And number 3 was 24 thousandths. On the exhaust valves, cylinder 1 was 39 thousandths, 2 was 42 thousandths, and 3 was 43 thousandths. So that gives us numbers compared to the original numbers, but it looks like we are good to go. Here's another disclaimer. At some point, you have to decide on how much you want to spend and do on your engine or tractor project. Looking in the rearview mirror, when this tractor was following me home, I decided to put extra effort in reconditioning it to my satisfaction. I didn't want to make it new again. I just wanted to make it whole so I could use it or find it a new home. The bonus was to show you how and why I did what I did, so you could use the information as you wish.
So here's where I am with the 755 project. I'm up north to be with family for the holidays, birthdays, and recovery from the knee replacements. Sometime after the first of the year, work will continue on this 755 and 2 new projects will be rolling in. One, a 755 with low compression and hard starting, and an 855 with part of a connecting rod coming out of the block. Look for a piece on these units to be posted and give me your thoughts on what you think we should do with them. Remember, the focus of this channel is to talk about what happens between the day we acquire something and the day we liquidate or become married to it. So here's an offer. If you'll send pictures and a story, I'll edit and post them. It'll give me something to do while the weather and recovery keeps me inside. Cheers.